Hey guys, welcome back. This time we're going to go over casting with a spinning rod for starters, then we'll get into some bait caster tips as well. A good starting point is to bring your reel around to where the spindle and your line are up closer to the rod. That way as you're holding it, you can easily grab it with your finger. A good stopping point that I like to use is to have my hand where my finger is in line with it, with the bail, and then I'll reel up slowly. When I get close to as much line as I want to leave hanging off the rod, I'll stick my finger down to stop the bail on the next revolution. From there, pull the line up with your finger, flip the bail open. Now we get into the cast. If you want to do short, precise casts, I like to reel the bait up within just a few inches of the rod tip, like so. Gives you a little more control if you want to flip in underneath a bush, something like that. For a longer cast, you need to leave a little extra length hanging off of there. For this part, the biggest tip that I can give anybody for trying to cast for distance or even precision is the feel of the cast. When you reach back, you don't necessarily need to come all the way down and touch the water or act like you're chopping wood and come all the way over the front side. What I like to tell my kids and other people is to come back until you feel the weight of the lure or the weight of the bait that you're using settle on the rod tip. You'll feel that little tug. As soon as you feel that, come back forward, and your release point should be somewhere around 11 o'clock or 1 o'clock. Now, a lot of times you'll see people, or you may catch yourself doing it, where you cast and you get a whole lot of hang time, but the bait doesn't go very far. Normally that means you're releasing with your finger either too soon, or you didn't let the weight of the lure settle on the back of the rod before you cast it. One way to get around this is the lasso cast. You come back and you make a little bit of a circle and toss it out there. The other way would be to settle the weight at the back of the rod and then come forward with it. And for this next one, we're going to do a little more of a short, precise cast. This is where we're going to reel the bait up closer to the rod tip. You'll start with the same position here, line up on your fingertip, bail open. And these I like to do as a side cast. You can also overhand them, but you tend to slap the bait onto the water when you do that. So I'll either side cast or I'll actually underhand it just a little bit. And this comes more down to feel, but you can also use the weight of the lure against the rod tip to feel out when to release. Now, another very solid tip for spinning reels, more so to do with mono or fluorocarbon line, but also applies to braid. And I don't always do this, I'm guilty myself. After you make a cast, rather than start reeling immediately, if you flip the bail closed, and I like to grab the line and run it up over the spool to make sure there's not a lot of slack on here. That does two things. When you start reeling and let the bail flip on its own, it puts about a half a turn twist onto the line. And that's the beginnings of some really not good stuff. Another little thing that I like to do if I'm fishing close to cover or I need a really precise stop on it is I'll shroud the spool with my hand. What I mean by that is after I make the cast and line is coming off, I'll take my left hand and I'll gently wrap around the spool. This lets line still come off, but you can stop it as you need, and then flip the bail closed. You keep your line tight, no loops, no twists. Now, I recorded some clips previously. Occasionally, even with braid, you'll get a slight twist in the line and you'll end up seeing at the edge of the spool, you'll see a little loop come up one way or the other. This is the beginnings of a bird nest if you don't handle it. Now, this little guy can be especially problematic because it's so deep in the reel. If you make a cast, chances are that's going to bird nest on you and twist up in your eyes. You can get those undone, but it's a royal pain. For this problem, I like to make a gentle cast just to get some line off of the reel. And as you can tell, that thing is still buried under there. So what I'll do is grab the line coming off the tip of the rod. You don't want to pull slack in front of the reel because that's going to possibly tangle up and make it worse. So you want to pull line out of the end of your rod and just gently pull it out until you get to that twist. And once you start getting close, like this one, you can see was actually a loop further down in the spool. If you keep pulling your slack gently, once you get to the twist, like that right there, there's one little loop that was in there. Once you get that done, flip your bail. You're going to hold your line tight. I like to hold it tight off the end of the reel, or you can go up one eye, whichever. And then from there, you're just going to reel your slack back up on. You're good to go. Now, another good tip on a spinning rod is adjusting your drag. You're going to want the drag to be a little lighter than your pound test of line. You can either get technical and use a scale to set this. I like to set mine by hand personally, and you want to set it to where you can pull line and the spool will release it without stretching your line, without breaking your line. And that's adjusted with this nut or cap on the end. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Turn it right, more drag. Turn it left, less drag. Simple as that. Another little tip for spinning reel: anti-reverse. Very handy thing. I leave it on 99% of the time, but say I'm reeling up for a cast and my line's already pretty close to the end, you got two options. You can flip the bail open, let a little line off, or sometimes I flip the anti-reverse, let that thing out a round or so. You're good to go. Flip it back on, make your cast. Now on to bait casters. There's a little more to setting these guys up. We'll start off with controls. First of all, you have drag, which is normally a star wheel. And then you have spool tension. On the other side, you'll have your brake adjustment. If it's mag brakes, you may need to pop the cover off to adjust some, and you'll probably have to pop the side cover off to adjust centrifugal brakes. I suggest looking at your manual to see. So a good starting point is to reel up whatever bait you're fishing with. Hit the thumb release and tighten the spool tension, smaller knob. Tighten it down to where the bait does not fall at all. Now you're going to slowly loosen this until you get a nice even fall on your bait, just like so. Beautiful. Next step, I like to set the brakes. A good starting point on average is going to be somewhere between the minimum and the maximum. The other way I like to set it, if I'm on a lake, I like to be able to hit the thumb release, let the bait drop into the water, and have no backlash or maybe one loose loop on the spool. Now drag is going to be adjusted similar to a spinning reel. Turn it to the right to tighten it up, turn it to the left to loosen it off. You want to set your drag to where you can easily pull the line. It's not going to stretch it and you don't feel it grabbing. If you feel it grabbing, it's probably because it's too tight and it's pulling the line into itself on the spool. When it comes time to do the cast, on a casting reel, there is no bail. All you have is your thumb lever. So when you click that, you want to hold just a little bit of thumb tension on the spool so that your bait does not fall. Casting position is going to be about the same. You'll come back until you feel the weight of the bait on the tip of your rod, and then come forward, let off with your thumb in that same 10, 11 o'clock, 1 or 2 o'clock position. And it will take a few casts to really get the feel of it. Now on a bait caster, the difference is where on a spinning reel, you can shroud the spool with your hand to slow your cast. A bait caster is going to rely on thumb tension to do that. At that starting point, with a smooth drop and no backlash from the brake, normally you can cast without a thumb. You can come back with your thumb on the spool, feel the weight, come forward, take your thumb off. At the end of the cast, no backlash. A little bit of slack line, no big deal. Alternatively, say you're making a precise cast, you're trying to cast under a tree, under a bush, right next to a laydown, you need to stop it. That's where you're going to start dragging your thumb on the spool. It kind of comes down to feels. Some people are more comfortable breaking with their casting hand. Some people like to switch hands. It depends on which one you are more comfortable with. Similar to a spinning reel is the cast, as far as how much line you want left hanging off. If you're going to make a short side cast or a really precise underhanded cast, it's good to have the bait reeled up pretty close to the tip. If you're going to go for a little bit longer cast, I like to leave about 12 to 16 inches sticking off the rod tip. This changes a little bit for the action of your rod and the weight of the bait that you're fishing with. Now, to show the thumb control, I'm going to do a decently long cast, so I'm going to leave my bait hanging down just a little bit, make sure I'm clear since I'm close to the bank. We're going to come back, let the cast off, and then I'm going to lightly drag my thumb, and most of the time you can hear the line going underneath your thumb. So we're going to come back, cast out, very light pressure. See, the line's a little bit tighter, no backlash. The alternative to that I will normally do if I'm casting very far or I have a very heavy bait on there is I'll make the same cast, except I will swap off to my offhand that's going to hold the rod afterwards, and I'll use that thumb to drag it to a stop. Normally I do that when I want to stop it on very tight line and stop it really quick, because I personally have less feeling in my left thumb. Now, another tip that helps some people on backlash on a casting reel is when you make the cast, instead of holding the reel level, some people have found that holding the reel at a little bit of an angle not only helps apply thumb pressure, but also helps in the line coming off of the reel and not allowing it to twist or form any loose loops on there. If you see this is a sign of bad things to come. Best way to handle it is to lightly put pressure with your thumb and pull on your line until you get all the slack loops off of there. Now you want to hold your slack tight between your fingers, reel it back on. One extra little tip: say you make a cast and you've got just a couple of loose loops on that thing, just click those brakes up. Now that we've gone over those couple of helpful tips, let's get out on the water and put those to practice. Let you guys see what I'm talking about. Let's go. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time in the Ageless Outdoor. That's almost really bad.